this Exploring History episode, we stumbled upon something remarkable, a forgotten mining community untouched for decades. Join us as we dive into the depths of history and unravel the legacy of this once thriving town. What stories lie within these old ruins? What dreams did the miners once hold as they worked deep underground? Join us today as we explore history.
Hey everyone, I'm William, your host for Exploring History. In this episode, we continue searching for the lost Lewisburg mining community. If you still need to watch part 1, please click the link below or at the end of this video. Today, we are joined by familiar faces, from Sloss Furnace, a National Historic Landmark, and our new guest, Jeff Newman, from the YouTube channel Underground Birmingham. This isn't just a quest to find the lost Lewisburg mining community and uncover what has been lost to time. It's about exploring and discovering the forgotten history. If you're new to this channel, we invite you to subscribe, like, and share our videos. It's completely free and helps us create more content for your benefit. Are you ready to join us into the unknown and bring the lost Lewisburg mining community back into the light?
In the last episode of Exploring History, we explored the lost Lewisburg mining community with help from Sloss Furnace, a National Historic Landmark. Our objective was to learn about the history and locate any evidence that the Lewisburg mining community existed in the area. We identified the site with the help of old maps and contacted Jeff from Underground Birmingham to learn more about this forgotten mining community. We met Jeff at the location of the former Lewisburg Mine No. 2 in Fultondale, Alabama.
Standing on the location of what eventually would have become the Lewisburg No. 2 coal mine. This big field here is kind of where all of the mine buildings were that supported the mining, the shops and things like that. But the No. 1 Mary Lee is about a half a mile back down the road. The coal washer was over there.
Yeah.
The tipple that they would use to pull the mine cars out of the mine was on this end of the building.
Okay.
Sat at a slight angle going up the hill, and it came out across here and it went down, and the mine opening was right up there just about under where the raceway gas pumps are located now, in that general vicinity. On the hill behind the coal washers was the hoist house where the engine was that pulled the mine cars out of the mine. And then behind that, in some of the earlier pictures that you see from the 1930s and 40s, you see this huge tailings pile behind it.
Yes.
So where the scrap materials were being dumped, all of that has now been removed. It is gone.
Wow.
This used to be Stouts Road that came up here. Later it was Highway 31, and they went from 2-lane to 4-lane. And by then, all of this was being destroyed, and the mine basically just disappeared.
My understanding of the impact of Interstate 65 construction to the Mary Lee mining community was that the interstate basically went straight through the mining community. So from what I've been able to find, whenever they built the interstate, late 1950s, early 1960s, around that area, when they were proposing the space, it went straight through the housing community, which meant that housing community was torn down for the sake of Interstate 65 to be built. And that is something that is a very common occurrence as you see this construction of roads and interstates and things like that, not just in the mining areas, but even in the city of Birmingham as well.
Curious about what was left, William and Jeff explored the woods and quickly discovered evidence of a previous thriving mining operation.
So these are the washers.
Right.
So what was the purpose of these washers?
Well, the coal, as it came out of the ground, of course, it had a lot of residual residue on it that had to be washed off before they could use it.
The main objective of the coal washer was to remove the impurities and dirt from the coal, making it suitable for use in boilers, coke ovens, or personal use. Typically, the washer was connected to the breaker house, where young boys, known as breaker boys, sorted coal by size. The washer was a crucial component of a coal preparation plant. Removing all the waste material from coal reduced the ash content, increased market value, and lowered transportation costs. A fun fact is that in 1810, Ernst Friedrich Wilhelm Lendig, a German coal mining pioneer, invented the coal preparation plant. Upon closer inspection, Jeff pointed out some interesting facts.
Now, I'm not really sure exactly what year this was built.
Yeah.
Because back in the very early days when they started, you'll notice down at the Mary Lee Lewisburg 1 at the coke ovens down there, they didn't have this sort of structure down there. That mine had already closed at that time, and they were not using the coke ovens any longer because they had built more modern coke ovens at the Sloss facilities and things in North Birmingham. So they were just hauling the coal from here over there to process it. But before they did, they had this here. You can see it's got that little stone wall that runs along in front of it. I wouldn't hazard to guess that that possibly could have been built as early as the 1900 or maybe even a little earlier than that, because they used to build a lot of things out of cut stone before they had concrete available.
That is fascinating. I keep on saying the same thing, but for me, it's amazing to stand where history happened.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to stand exactly where 100 years ago, miners were working hard to support their families and do what they needed to do.
Exactly.
To stand right here, to me, that is amazing, and I think it will always be amazing to me.
After inspecting the remains of the washer, William developed an interest in the historical appearance of the area. The concrete base of the washer still exists today, serving as proof of an industrial era that has long since passed. He began researching by studying the available pictures from the 1930s and noticed intriguing details that offered a glimpse into the past. The tipple and mining opening for Lewisburg Mine No. 2, along with the adjacent buildings, have disappeared over time, most likely in the 1950s.
But it is very interesting, and like you say, to think that people came out here.
Yes.
And everywhere you look and lean over, you find coal. And to make coke out of it, couldn't have too many impurities in it and chemicals. So you'd have coking coal, and then you have just general purpose coal, like they would have put in a steam engine on a train, and your boiler at your house, and your heater. And
I mean, this could be 100 years old right here.
It's very easily, it could be.
So coke at the very beginning being created was just almost exclusively for industry. You see some other aspects being used for it, but in these early years, it's almost exclusively for industry. And so you see the coke ovens at the Mary Lee mines being used for that. It's eventually bought by the Alabama Consolidated Coal Company, and then eventually bought by the Sloss Sheffield Steel and Iron Company. When Sloss comes into play and Sloss Sheffield absorbs that land basically by purchasing the Alabama Consolidated Coal Company, the coke that was produced at the Mary Lee mines was used almost exclusively for the North Birmingham furnaces, which were the numbers 3 and 4 furnaces of the Sloss Company. The city furnaces, which is where the museum sits today, is the number 1 and number 2 furnaces. So these were the 2 furnaces built right after the city furnaces, which is the Sloss Museum today in the North Birmingham area. Now, right around the late 1920s, Sloss actually stopped producing coke at the Mary Lee coke ovens because they had built a byproducts and coke plant that was also in North Birmingham that took over control of making coke for all the furnaces and that they owned at that time.
William's curiosity was piqued, and he wanted to uncover more about the forgotten history. With Jeff's help, they soon stumbled upon another structure that appeared to be connected to the washer and part of the coal preparation plant for the Lewisburg mining community.
What do you think what this was?
There was some sort of a storage on top of this, and they were dumping materials out of these chutes, maybe onto a conveyor belt, but obviously there was something
right here, like
down here. You can see all these bolts on here, so they had equipment mounted on top.
And there's some wood up there.
And Yeah, I wish they had better diagrams of this site, but there's very little information on it.
I want to go back here and see.
William's most significant question was figuring out which parts of the structure were original and which were added later.
This is amazing. So we look at all this.
You know, it's hard to tell sometimes how much of this was original and then how much of it was added on later as they did improvements
Yeah.
to the site. So this may have had something to do with the tailings pile distribution, and that was the coal washing and loading for the trains.
Want to see if the hoist house is up there?
Well, the hoist house would have been very large.
Yeah.
So
Maybe just some whatever's left.
there may be or not, because they did destroy the tailings pile and everything back there, so there may not be anything, but we could take a peek.
After some hiking and searching, Jeff and William discovered the foundation of what appeared to be the hoist house.
Oh, wow.
We examined aerial photographs from the 1930s and compared our current location to Highway 31. We discovered that the foundation was sitting at a 35-degree angle off the road and lined up perfectly with our location. This left us with only one conclusion, that we were standing on top of the foundation of the hoist house.
This is exactly the correct direction. You have your pit here where your hoist cable spool would have been. The foundation is laid out properly. You have the bolts that would have bolted the hoist down. And so I would say, yes, this would have probably been the hoist house for the mine.
The hoist house had the vital function of pulling out the loaded mine cars from the mine, either through an inclined slope or a vertical shaft. The building housed the hoist engine and hoist cable spool. In the early days, the hoist engine was powered by steam produced in the boiler house, which was next to the hoist building. However, later in the 1920s, the steam engines were replaced by electric motors.
I'm not sure how deep their slope was down to their main loadout point in the mine, but it would not have been unusual from this point down into the mine to the loadout to be 1,000, 1,200 feet.
Jeff and William were about to leave when Jeff discovered a unique artifact.
Now, looking at this, I would say this is most likely part of an electrical panel. They would make their electrical panels out of this rock, drill the holes through it, have the insulators on it like that. And when you'd go into a building where they charged the miners' lights and things, they would have a board like that on the wall, and they would have places to connect the miners' lamps to recharge them when they had gone to electric power, battery power.
Wow.
So I'm guessing that may have been some kind of an electronic backboard for a piece of equipment.
Fascinating.
Birmingham industry could not exist without coal and in response coke. It is imperative that coke was being used in Birmingham industry. There's actually something called the Eureka experiment or the Oxmoor experiment, depending on where you see it. The Oxmoor furnaces in the 1870s is the first furnaces in Birmingham, in the Birmingham area, that used coke exclusively to make iron. And that was such a pivotal moment, because if coke had not been used in industry, you never have seen the growth of industry that we saw, as you have over 28 furnaces in blast by 1900, and you have all this coke being produced for furnaces and for iron. So if you really want to think about the importance of this material, without coke, which of course can't be made without coal, so without coal, none of Birmingham would have been possible. We may not have even seen Birmingham survive without this material, as it was built as an industrial city. Without that coke, it couldn't be industrial, and so it might not have survived. So the importance of coal and coke to Birmingham industry is vital.
Jeff and William were searching for the Mary Lee beehive coke ovens. However, during their journey, they stumbled upon a strange object that left them puzzled about its intended purpose. The object was a rail cart beside the old Mary Lee railway tracks. Its location and position were perplexing. The machine looked like a hand-operated winch, but it was missing its hand cranks. The mining winch had the name D. Round & Son on one side and Cleveland O on the other. Jeff tried to find information about the equipment, but he could only find a picture with no description of its usage. In the picture, it was evident that the cart was used at coke ovens, but the location of this railroad cart made no sense because it was nowhere near the beehive coke ovens. If you have any information about this cart, its purpose, and how it was used, please leave a comment below. In their search, Jeff and William found more artifacts that confirmed they were on the right track to finding the Mary Lee beehive coke ovens.
We're down here by the Mary Lee Railroad, and at this point that we're standing at here, you can see that there used to be a trestle that went across the creek and back up to the right. That was going to the Lewisburg number 2 coal mine.
Which is up on Highway 31 where the racetrack is.
Yes, where the Raceway gas station is. The portal was in the middle of their parking lot.
Wow.
Then over here, the railroad split, and it went around that direction. That took it to the Mary Lee Lewisburg number 1 mine, so they could load the coal over there and then bring it back out this way.
Later in the 1930s, a strategic extension was built that went all the way to the other end of the main line at Black Creek. This extension, a testament to the railroad's growing influence, not only enabled them to loop around that point, but also significantly enhanced the region's transportation network, fostering economic growth and connectivity. This 1906 United States Geological Survey map, the map shows the approximate location of the mines, a mine camp village, and probably battery coke ovens along Stouts Road, indicating that Jeff and William are on the right path.
So if you could get down on your hands and knees and find the dates that these rails were made, but if you were interested, but may take a while to find one. Well, here's one right here. It says 1948. So that's when this particular rail was made.
1948?
48. So this rail was put in after that point. Tennessee, USA on it. So TCI, Tennessee Coal and Iron, had a rail plant in Inslee. So it is very possible that this rail came out of Inslee, Alabama, after 1948. The oldest rail that I found was in Red Mountain Park. There was one over there. It said Tennessee, USA, Open Hearth, 1908.
Oh, wow.
And if you find some of these old cross ties, in the middle of the cross ties, a lot of time they would drive a small nail in it, and it has a number on the top.
Yeah.
And if it says 32, that means 1932. That's the date when that cross tie was installed.
Wow.
So there's a lot of interesting things you can...
Old spikes
and things if you're looking for them.
Mary Lee mines, just along with all of the coal mines that would produce coke, very, very important to the growth of Birmingham, of course, because you have to have that coal and that coke production in order for it to work. And so you have this idea of this company that's providing coke, particularly for furnace companies that weren't big enough to make their own coke on site. For instance, the City Furnaces, that is the Sloss Museum today, originally had 288 coke ovens on its site, so that it would not have to rely on another company to produce that coke. A lot of other furnaces were not that capable of building their own infrastructure on their sites, and so they relied on companies or mines like the Mary Lee mines that could produce its own coke in order to provide it for the fuel to run their own furnaces.
Jeff and William stumbled upon the remains of a building of unknown purpose during a brief hike before discovering the Mary Lee beehive coke ovens.
Okay, now basically the way that coke ovens worked is you had a rails that went along the top. Mm-hmm. Coal cars would come down, dump the coal into the top of the ovens. You would get a fire started in the ovens. You would get it burning, and then they would block off the entrance to the coke oven so that it would not get any oxygen.
Oh, wow.
So basically what you're doing is it's just sitting there baking.
Coke is used to make iron, which was the main purpose, or the first step really that you need in order to make steel, because of course you can't make steel without the iron. So you have furnaces like Sloss furnaces, which are smelters. And in order to smelt iron ore into workable forms of iron, or what's called pig iron, in order to do that, you need to reach high temperatures in order to actually melt it. But then you also need the gases within the furnace to help start reducing that iron ore to make it easier to actually melt it down and get the impurities out. And so technology over the years with iron making was all trying to find the best ways and the fastest ways in order to reduce iron. And coke is such a great material for that, as it reaches very hot temperatures, allowing temperatures within the furnaces to get to 3,800 degrees Fahrenheit. You also have the porous nature of the coke, allowing those gases to come through, which helps reduce at the top much faster and easier. And they also have the lightweight nature of the coke, while also keeping its strength a major player in order to be able to mass produce iron. So you no longer have to worry about the charcoal breaking down under the weight of the ingredients that are stacked on top of it, because the coke can hold up that weight. So we're able to make much larger furnaces that produce much higher amounts of iron per day in order to grow that industry. And then once you make the iron, of course, you have to make the steel, which is very similar process of you having to heat and melt that iron down, try to pull that carbon out of the iron. And so it's one of those things where you need all three ingredients in order to make iron and then process steel. And Birmingham had them all right here. Is such an important part of Birmingham history.
The Birmingham district became the biggest iron and steel producer in the southern United States. It was blessed with unique geological conditions that provided the district with abundant deposits of iron ore, coal, limestone, or dolomite, the essential raw materials for making iron and steel. These deposits were only a few miles apart at specific locations within the district. This fortunate geological arrangement resulted in the lowest raw material assembly costs in the United States. It allowed the district to increase, especially in the last 2 decades of the 19th century.
You can see that these have the brick-lined ovens where they use fire brick for the inside, and then they've coated the outside with cut stone. And these ovens through here are generally some of the best conditioned ones in this area.
In Jefferson County?
Yeah. You have other coke ovens where they've gone through and robbed all of this cut stone off. The ones down at West Blockton, they took a lot of the stone off of those to rebuild the furnaces at Tannehill.
Oh, wow.
So, but you don't see very many with the rock and the brick and everything still in place. So these are kind of special and unique.
Yes, they are.
It's incredible to think about the challenges these miners faced. The long hours, the dangers, the sacrifices. And yet, their spirit lives on in the echoes of this forgotten mining community, a testament to the resilience and determination of those who came before us. As the sun sets on this forgotten mining community, we can't help but feel grateful for the opportunity to uncover its hidden stories and honor the legacy of those who once called this place home.
Well, guys, that's a wrap on our exploration of this incredible mining site. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. And remember, the past may fade, but its stories will always endure. Until next time, we're incredibly grateful for everyone who tuned in, likes, subscribes, and shares our content. Your support allows us to continue bringing you these fascinating historical journeys. I'm your host, William. Thank you for joining us today, and I can't wait to see you next time when we explore histories.